After reading this story together, we're going to describe the characters, setting, beginning, middle, and end. So let's review what all of those are. The title is what the story is called. The beginning, middle, and end are what happened first, second, and third in this story. At school, we've talked about the setting. The setting is where the story happens. So here are some examples. It might happen in a castle, at the beach, in the ocean. Maybe a story happens on the bus. So it's all the places where a story could take place. The characters are the who of the story. So maybe the people. Sometimes characters are animals in stories. Characters can be real or they can be not real. We know that dogs can be in stories, and sometimes stories have talking dogs. What are some of your favorite stories? Maybe you have a favorite book or movie. A lot of movies are from books. Like one of my favorites is The Little Mermaid or Rainbow Fish. Star Wars is a great one too. So what are some of your favorite book or movie titles? This is a really good story called Those Shoes. I wish I could read it to you in person, but I know that you'll still enjoy it. Looking at the cover, what do you think this story will be about? After reading it, we'll talk about all of those story elements, like the characters. And I'll show you how you can use a paper like this, called story sequencing, to tell the beginning, middle, and end. Here we go.
Those Shoes by Beth Belts. I have dreams about those shoes. Black high tops, 2 white stripes. Grandma, I want them. There's no room for want around here, just need, Grandma says. And what you need are new boots for winter. Brandon T comes to school in those shoes. He says he's the fastest runner now, not me. I was always the fastest before those shoes came along. Nate comes to school in those shoes. Antonio and I count how many times Nate goes to the bathroom. 7 times in one day, just so he can walk up and down the hall real slow. Next, Alan, Jacoby, and Terrence each get a pair. Then one day, in the middle of kickball, one of my shoes comes apart. Looks like you could use a new pair, Jeremy, Mr. Alfred, the guidance counselor, says. He brings out a box of shoes and other stuff he has for kids who need things. He helps me find the only shoes that are my size, Velcro, like the ones my little cousin Marshall wears. They have an animal on them from a cartoon I don't think any kid ever watched. When I come back to the classroom, Alan Jacoby takes one look at my Mr. Alfred shoes and laughs, and so do Terrence, Brandon T, and everyone else. The only kid not laughing is Antonio Parker. At home, Grandma says, "How kind of Mr. Alfred." I nod and turn back. I'm not going to cry about any dumb shoes. But when I'm writing my spelling words later, every word looks like the word shoes. And my grip is so tight on my pencil, I think it might bust. On Saturday, Grandma says, "Let's check out those shoes you're wanting so much." I got a little bit of money set aside. Might be enough. You never know. At the shoe store, Grandma turns those shoes over so she can check the price. When she sees it, she sits down heavy. Maybe they wrote it down wrong. Grandma shakes her head. Then I remember the thrift shops. What if there's a rich kid who outgrew his, or got 2 pairs for Christmas and had to give one of them away? We ride the bus to the first thrift shop. Black cowboy boots, pink slippers, sandals, high heels, every kind of shoes except the ones I want. We ride the bus to the second thrift shop. Not a pair of those shoes in sight. Around the corner is the third thrift shop. I see something in the window. Black shoes with 2 white stripes. High tops. Perfect shape. $2.50. Those shoes. My heart is pounding hard as I take off my shoes and hitch up my baggy socks. How exciting, Grandma says. What size are they? I shove my foot into the first shoe, curling my toes to get my heel in. I don't know, but I think they fit. Grandma kneels on the floor and feels for my toes at the end of the shoe. Oh, Jeremy, she says, I can't spend good money on shoes that don't fit. I pull the other shoe on and try to walk around. They're okay, I say, holding my breath and praying that my toes will fall off right then and there. But my toes don't fall off. I buy them anyway with my own money, and I squeeze them on and limp to the bus stop. At home a few days later, Grandma puts a new pair of snow boots in my closet and doesn't say a word about my 2 big feet shuffling around in my 2 small shoes. Sometimes shoes stretch, I say. Grandma gives me a hug. I check every day, but those shoes don't stretch. I have to wear my Mr. Alfreys to school instead. One day during math, I glance at Antonio's shoes. One of them is taped up, and his feet look smaller than mine. After school, I head to the park to think. Antonio is there, the only kid who didn't laugh at my Mr. Alfrey shoes. We shoot baskets. A loose piece of tape on Antonio's shoe smacks the concrete every time he jumps. I think, I'm not going to do it. We leap off the swings. I'm not going to do it. We race from one end of the playground to the other. I'm not going to do it, I say. Do what? Antonio says, breathing hard. Grandma calls me for supper and invites Antonio over too. After supper, he spies my shoes. How come you don't wear them? Antonio asks. I shrug. My hands are sweaty. I can feel him wishing those shoes were his. That night, I am awake for a long time thinking about Antonio. When morning comes, I try on my shoes one last time. Before I can change my mind, the shoes are in my coat. Snow is beginning to fall as I run across the street to Antonio's apartment. I put the shoes in front of his door, push the doorbell, and run. At school, Antonio is smiling big in his brand new shoes. I feel happy when I look at his face, and mad when I look at my Mr. Alfrey shoes. But later, when it's time for recess, something happens. Everywhere, there is snow. Leave your shoes in the hall and change into your boots, the teacher announces. Leave your shoes in the hall. It's then I remember what I have in my backpack. New boots. New black boots that no kid has ever worn before. Standing in line to go to recess, Antonio leans forward and says, "Thanks." I smile and give him a nudge. Let's race!
That's such a nice story, and it gives us a sneak peek of what we're going to be talking about next week with wants and needs. Okay, so let's look at our story elements, characters and setting first. For the characters and setting, you can just watch and listen. You don't need to write what you see on the screen right now. I will tell you what you're going to write next for the beginning, middle, and end. If you want to take notes with me and write these words, you can, but you do not have to yet. First, I'm making a list of the characters in this story, or who was in this story. I know our main characters were Grandma and Jeremy. Who else was in the story? If I didn't give you enough time to think or talk about it, you can always pause the video. You can also look back in the story and rewind the video. Other people were the classmates at school. Antonio, that's the person who received the shoes, and Mr. Alfrey, that's the teacher who gave those shoes to Jeremy, the ones that he didn't like very much. Now let's look at the house and talk about the setting of the story. Where were different places that the story happened? Because there wasn't just one. You might have thought of the school, the apartments, or the home of where the boys lived, the thrift store, and the basketball court, or you could write the park. Now we're going to use the characters in the setting to retell the story with words and pictures. Okay, so this is where you will do some writing. So have your paper and pencil ready. You can pause it and check back in, and I'll explain the directions. To make it easier, you can split your whole paper into 3 sections. You don't have to draw boxes just like this. This is just an example to help you. So think about what happened at the beginning. Think about what happened in the middle of the story. And think about the big point that happened at the end. Okay? You can talk to your family about how you might write this, how you might draw this. I ask that you have a picture of the characters in the setting, and you have a word for each section, beginning, middle, and end. Okay, so you have to draw the characters in the setting while you tell the beginning, middle, and end. Okay, a tip for using words is you can write a sentence like, in the beginning, blank happened. Or you can just label things like you can write the names of the characters. You can write Jeremy next to the picture of Jeremy. Please let me know if you have any questions. And I would love to see a picture of your work when you're done. We can also share it on the Thursday Zoom meeting.